Our next speaker needs no introduction, but nonetheless, next up is the brilliant marketing legend, Seth Godin. In this power-packed session, he'll be sharing his insights on the topics that have been top of mind for him, like the future of marketing, his thoughts on Clubhouse, dealing with imposter syndrome, and AI's impact on marketing. So please help me welcome Seth to the stage.
So welcome, Seth Godin. It's a pleasure to have you with us today at Adworld. I know our audience has been waiting for this for a long time now, so let's get right to it.
Beautiful.
Okay. So you have achieved a lot in life, more than the average marketer probably would. I was wondering what makes you tick, what makes you get out of bed in the morning?
Oh, what could be better than being able to show up with the benefit of the doubt? I mean, I've benefited from so much privilege, most of it unfair, but to be a teacher, to have people eager to go on a journey. I think that marketing is not about advertising. Marketing is making things better by making better things. And every day I get to do that. And I couldn't imagine a better gig.
Thanks for that. So in that kind of light, what business would you start today if you started from scratch? No budget, no contacts. What would you do?
So let's talk about this for a little bit, because starting from scratch, I think, is a really important concept in a world that is topsy-turvy. When we are engaged with people who want to lend us money at close to 0% interest, with venture capitalists who want you to become a certain kind of entity, I think we need to take a deep breath and figure out who we want to become and who we want to serve. And I believe there has never been a better moment to be an impresario, to be a leader of people who want to be led, to be a connector. That if we think about this event that you and I are talking about, you showed up and connected people who wanted to come together. And there are more dislocated and disconnected people than ever. And we look at the giant social media companies, and they're sort of the generic average version of, you're looking for everyone, we have everyone. But no one's looking for everyone. We're looking for someone. We're looking to be seen. So if you can figure out who the smallest viable audience is, who's the minimum number of people that would be enough, and you can delight them and you can connect them, that's a gig you don't need a lot of money to start. You just need the commitment to make things where they could be, to make things better.
So starting from the minimum viable audience, figuring out what it is they want, and then what it is you can actually offer to them.
That's right. It's not like we have a shortage of people who want something. And we don't really want more junk anymore. What we want is meaning. So be a person who creates meaning.
Yeah, so this actually brings us to our next question. So using micro-influencers, targeted ad campaigns, analytics data, brands now have the ability to create, even smaller segments every year. How far do you think this segmentation can go? I mean, you obviously talk about minimum viable audiences. Is there a limit to it? And what does the future of marketing look like when everyone can advertise their product starting with a few dollars a day?
Yeah. So let's understand that television was invented because we needed a place to run TV ads. And that's why we invented radio, and that's why we invented magazines. The internet is the first mass medium in history that wasn't invented to make marketers happy. And in fact, it is not a mass medium. There is no place on the internet you can buy an ad that reaches nearly as many people as a network TV show used to reach. Not even close. It is not a mass medium. And we just finished 20 years of advertisers trying to force it to be one. And what it's good at is being a micro medium. That if you're bringing average stuff to average people, you're in trouble on the internet. But if you can figure out how to be remarkable, specific for the person who wants to hear from you, if you can earn permission, if you can show up with a story we want to hear, it's the greatest bargain in history as an advertiser. So how small can it get? 10 people. I think that there are business-to-business projects that 10 people would be enough. I think there are trade shows where 500 people is plenty. I think there are consumer products, Kickstarters, where 1,000 people generates millions of dollars in revenue. So it's not a giant number in a world of 7 billion people. It's just advertisers like the slogan, you can pick anyone and we're anyone. And I think we have to shift gears and say, nope, we are specific, and we're going to demonstrate that by regularly sending you to our competition, because they're not our competition. And, pick any area that people who care about. And I can give you an example of a brilliant success story that has succeeded by sending people to someone else, because it's not for everyone.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you think that in a world that both allows us to be specific as well as in our targeting, as well as to go broad, we should start from the very specific, the very small audience, and kind of like expand to that in contrast, of course, to what has been happening so far with television and mass advertising?
Yeah. I mean, every success I can think of. Let's pick, I don't know, Amazon. Amazon's first 3 years were very specific. They were selling to someone like Nathan Myhrvold, who had a 3,000, 6,000, 10,000 book library and wanted a specific book, right? They sold more computer books than anything else. They were very, very clear who this was for years before they were Amazon. Think about Zoom, where you and I are talking right now. Zoom did not start so that kindergartners would have a chance to go to school from home. And so even the mass markets today are being created by the micro marketer.
And then what it is you think that brings the product to the mass market? What makes Zoom succeed in the end and reach so many people? Or like same with Amazon and a host of other companies like that.
Okay, so I'll tell you the secret. The secret, which is not true in 1960, 70, or 80. In 1980, the secret was retail. The secret was you ran ads to get into stores, and stores made you enough money to get ads. That's not the secret. The secret is the network effect. The secret is creating something that works better if other people do it with you. Creating something worth talking about, being remarkable. Every single success story that I can think of succeeded not because they ground it out and churned people through a funnel. They succeeded because people decided to talk about it. So if you're trying to sell average stuff to average people, you're doomed, because why would I talk about that?
So you obviously talk about enrollment and permission marketing, right?
Yeah. So enrollment is someone who wants to go where you're going. And it's not somebody who's being pushed or tricked or forced to go where you're going. This is not a party hat, even though it might look like one. It's a funnel. And a lot of advertisers in the measured world of the internet think about funnels. And the idea of a funnel is put a lot of attention in at the top and a few sales that come out the bottom. And you count on your tech people to keep the funnel from leaking. You count on your direct marketing people to make it so you get a better conversion rate. But mostly, because you're an advertiser, how do I get more attention at the top? I think this is bogus. You need to do this and turn it into a megaphone. Not a megaphone for you to yell at people, but a megaphone for your customers to use, for your customers to become evangelists for what you're doing. Because as a megaphone, it will reach more people than you could ever afford to reach.
That makes sense. So you are one of the people who helped establish email marketing as we know it. What do you see as the next big thing in marketing? And, is that a new channel? Is it a way of doing things? Is it AI applications?
Right. So 20 years ago, I wrote a bestseller called Permission Marketing. And in it, I described the next big thing. And the next big thing hasn't changed. It's the same big thing. And yet people in this industry have been ignoring it for 20 years. It's pretty simple. For the first time in the history of humanity, people around the world can hear from you for free at scale if they want to. That's incredible. And yet you're looking for likes and hearts and friends and social media. And yet you're running tweets about Oreo cookies. And yet you're putting on a show. No. The answer is, who would miss you if you were gone? That is the next big thing, to be missed if you were gone. To talk to people who want to hear from you specifically and to offer them two things: status and affiliation. Status, human beings want to know who's up and who's down. And affiliation, we want to know who's in and who's out. And if you are offering people in language that they are eager to hear a path to becoming up and in, they're going to sign up, because that's what human beings want, to be up and in.
And of course, you use some marketing channels to reach to them. And I know you're quite frugal when it comes to the channels that you make yourself available for. I mean, you're writing books, you have your podcast, you have your daily blog. Why did you decide to join Clubhouse?
Okay, so if you want me to rant about Clubhouse for a minute, I will. First of all, I needed to save my name so that no one else would pretend to be me. Secondly, you can't quit Clubhouse. There isn't a button to quit. So even if I wanted to quit, I couldn't. I find the overly aggressive growth hacking at Clubhouse to be annoying. I think the idea that you can't really use it until you share all your contacts, that they create this game theory dynamic to get other people to then, I ranted about this a little bit, but that's problem number one. And problem number two is the entire nature of a Clubhouse, of a conversation, is it's not supposed to scale. We don't want it to scale. At a cocktail party, once 4 people are in a circle, suddenly it splits into 2. You don't want 8 people, 12 people, because only one person can talk at a time. It is not asynchronous, it's synchronous. That the beauty of Clubhouse is that you shouldn't use it to market your stuff because it's not the right platform. And I get that the cool kids are into it, and I get that it's going to grow. Fine. If you want to go do what the cool kids are doing, please do. You were probably on MySpace as well. But my philosophy is different. My philosophy is build an asset, watch that asset, make promises, and keep them. And all I can tell you is the last time I was on Clubhouse, one room after another was how to hustle on Clubhouse to make money. I'm not sure that that's the business you want to be in.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense under that light. Let's shift gears for a sec. So your latest book, The Practice, is almost like a handbook for people who are looking to understand and engage with the creative process. What compelled you to write it?
Well, first, thank you. I wrote it for people like you who are engaging in forward motion, who don't want to be cogs in the machine. And I had met enough people over the years who wanted to understand what sort of magical talent someone like I had that enabled me to write all these books and write all these blog posts and do all this other stuff. But I don't work that many hours. And I'm not gifted. I wasn't born with a talent. My high school teacher wrote in my yearbook that I was the bane of her existence and I would never amount to anything. That's a literal quote. So where did it come from? Well, special for this audience, it came from juggling. And I'm going to teach everybody here how to juggle. This is one of the things that I teach in the book. If you've ever seen a juggler, what you probably notice is that they don't drop the ball very often. And if you're a good person, you have been rooting for them not to drop the ball, because after all, the entire point of juggling is to not drop the ball. So if I say, hey, Bill, you want to learn how to juggle, you might give it a try. And here's what will happen almost every time with an adult is you'll throw once, you'll throw twice, and then a ball will go out of position. And you don't want to fail, so you will lunge to grab it. And now you're over here. And then the next ball is way off and you're out of position. Game's over. You lose. And people say, I hate juggling, and they give up. So that's not how I teach juggling. I've taught thousands of people how to juggle. And what we do is we use only one ball, and we throw the ball and we let it drop to the floor. And we throw the ball and we let it drop to the floor. For 20 minutes, all we do is throw one ball with our right hand. And then we add another ball and we throw it with our left hand. We let it drop to the floor. Left hand, drop to the floor. Because if you learn how to throw, the catching will take care of itself. And this is something I have never seen in a typical ad agency. It's something I have never seen in a typical marketing agency. They're all so hooked on the adrenaline of catching, racing around to make a deadline, to please the unpleasable client, to make sure that the rubylith is cut properly, to get the media play. It's all about catching. That the amount of time they spend learning how to throw is minimal. But if you learn how to throw, the catching takes care of itself. And so what it means to have writer's block is simple. Writer's block is simply, I am afraid of bad writing, so therefore I will write nothing. But if we can get comfortable with bad writing, then we can edit it later. Because if you do enough bad writing, the good writing will creep in. If you write enough bad copy, the good copy will show up. If you engage with enough customers, you will learn what they are thinking about. But if you wait for perfect, you're going to be waiting for a very long time. That was a rant. I'm sorry. I was ranting.
That was perfect. So do you think perfection is a threat to the process? And is the practice for everyone, or is it just for creators?
Okay, so those are two questions. I'll answer the second one first. Anyone who is doing work that is above the level of a ditch digger is a creative. Because what it means to be a creative is you're doing something that might not work. You're doing something I can't write down in a manual. You're doing something that an AI won't be able to easily replace. That's creative work, because all creative work means is a human being did this, a human being who cared, a human being who wanted to make something better, and they were willing to do something that might not work. That's creative. And so that is who this is for. And if we get stuck on perfect, it's not a threat. Perfect is a beautiful way to hide, because nothing is perfect. Therefore, you don't have to ship anything. You can hide behind perfection just like you can hide behind authenticity. Neither one is helpful.
Okay, no, I think it makes sense. But how does one change their story? They tell themselves about who they are, what they can achieve, what they've achieved so far.
Here's what I have discovered. We tend to change what we do before we change our story, not the other way around. So if you're not a runner, but you figure out how to put on sneakers and run around the block every day for 30 days, you will start telling yourself you're a runner. But if you need to sit at home waiting for the perfect day and waiting until you believe you're a runner, you're never going to go for a run. And so the way we fix our story is by doing the work, by engaging in the practice, by shipping the work, by speaking up, by leading, by connecting. If you do those things, even if you feel like a fraud, especially if you feel like a fraud, then your story will catch up.
Under that light, do you still get imposter syndrome? What are some ways to deal with it?
I only get it when I'm doing important work. I only get it when I'm pushing myself outside of the rut, because imposters are simply people who haven't discovered yet if this particular thing is going to work, which means all artists are imposters. That when an artist shows up with something new, they can't be sure it's going to work because it's new. And imposter syndrome is a sign, a symptom that you're doing the work properly.
So there's a similarity in what you're describing as the practice with Charles Bukowski's life, putting your heart and soul into the creative process. What then do you think Bukowski wrote in a famous poem, if it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it? He talks about the creative process almost being a cancer. Is this in conflict with trusting the process, as you say, and just starting with no emotional attachment to the output?
Yeah, completely. And I didn't know him. I don't know a lot of the details about his life, but my recollection is it was tragic and that he abused alcohol and other things. Don't be him. Don't be him. Be a professional. You don't find, doctors talking about their craft this way. You don't find airline pilots talking about their craft this way. Stop it. Stop reserving this particular sort of poignant pathos, this drama, this bleeding to our craft. It's simply our craft. And you can do it without the narrative, without the drama. You can simply show up and do it. I knew Jay Chiat back in the day before he died too young. I knew Lee Clow. The thing is, the people who were the best at this, they knew it was just a craft. They knew that there was no authenticity, that nothing was bursting out of them. You show up and you do the work. If you read Springsteen's autobiography, it's absolutely fascinating, because at no point in the autobiography does he pretend that he's anything but a hardworking guy from New Jersey who puts on a show.
So trusting the process and just getting to it, doing the work, whatever this means for everybody.
I wish I had a shortcut. I wish I could invoke demons or astrology, because that would sell more books. I don't got any of that.
Okay, yeah, no, it makes sense, but it's probably also quite helpful. Now with COVID and the lockdowns and everybody having some increased autonomy, working from home and not being tied to a work environment, How does one become better boss to themselves? We've had some level of increased autonomy. How do we structure things? How do we make sure that we're productive and that we remain true to our craft?
Yeah, I love this question, and I'm glad I didn't read the questions in advance. These are terrific. Here's the deal. If you had a real boss that treated you the way you treat you, you'd quit. Someone who wakes you up in the middle of the night telling you you're a failure and that tomorrow is going to be horrible. Somebody who has really bad work habits and doesn't give you feedback at appropriate, all these things. We're terrible at being our own boss. And then when you're on lockdown and working from home, either you have a real boss who's taking attendance by forcing you to be in a Zoom room all day, or you have to figure out how to spend your time. And what a great moment to adopt a practice. Never miss a deadline. Never go over budget. Do not engage in the drama of self-negation on your way to shipping work that matters. Figure out how to work on a regular schedule. Do not let other people take over your calendar. Understand that going to meetings is not your job. Figure out how to avoid going to meetings by insisting anytime you have the leverage to there be a Google Doc instead, right? That it's very hard for me to imagine why most business meetings are more than 9 minutes long. There should be a Google Doc sent to everybody. We comment on it on our own time, and then we come together. Any questions? And we answer them. That's it. On to the next thing. And the next thing is probably 20 minutes of you sitting there quietly doing your work on your agenda, on your schedule. And if you're telling me you don't have a boss that will let you do that, I'm asking you, why don't you quit?
Sure. However, you have to admit that that's quite different to what's happening in most companies. Like it would probably require a revolution or some sort of change. And in that light, like you've made some interesting remarks on education. You've written an entire thesis on it. Our industrialized system, is teaching kids to sit in straight rows and just obey instructions, almost like crushing any creativity in them. Do you feel that this is starting to change lately? Has COVID made any difference with distance learning, either for better or for worse?
I think that parents now see the fraud of organized education because they hadn't been in it in 20 years, but they're seeing it happening to their kids. And some parents are dealing with it by complaining and by living with it, which is horrible. And some parents are realizing that all kids are homeschooled all the hours they're not in real school. And I'm a huge fan of public school. I think public school is important, but I think it's essential that parents realize that if they're not going to give their kids projects, if they're not going to create an established cycle of learning, if they're not going to get enrollment from their kids when they're 6 or 8 or 9, and they're just going to hand them an iPad, it's their fault. And I get that double income or single family homes, it's really, really, really hard. I'm not minimizing at all how hard this is. I'm just not going to lie about the obligation. And the obligation is if a kid has been pushed to be a cog in the system, to do the minimum, to be sitting in the back row, then by the time they're 18, when computers are doing all the cog work, it's going to be really hard for them to get a gig. And I think the alternative is for parents to start saying, what is school for? The same way creative directors have to say, what is this ad for? If you're not asking that question, then I think you're wasting time and money.
So just asking why and really trying to understand, how and what is the status quo? Do we actually need it to remain like this?
Exactly. I think it makes a big difference.
A lot of what you write in that regard is about human behavior, habits, and psychology, like across your books and your work. To what extent do you think these influencer marketers work? And is it something that every marketer should be either aware of or utilizing in their work?
I'm sorry, I missed the very first part of the question. Could you try one more?
A lot of what you write and a lot of what you speak about has to do with psychology, human behavior, understanding how people work, what makes them tick, and then of course how you impact change. Do you think that this is a useful tool for marketers to have, something they should be aware of? It's not a core marketing principle, at least what we've been taught.
Right. In the practice, I talk about good taste. And I looked to try to find a definition for good taste, and I couldn't find one. So I made one up. I think good taste is knowing what your customers want just before they do. And so good taste in car design means don't launch something that looks like an Edsel, because maybe that's what was good for your business, but your customers didn't get the joke. And in marketing and in advertising, what we need is good taste. We need to figure out how to show up with a story that's true, that resonates with people, that helps them get to where they want to go. Where does that come from? Well, yeah, I think reading Dan Ariely and Adam Grant and a lot of other people is super useful. But where it really comes from is engaging with people. And it is easier now than ever. You don't need a focus group, but you need to spend half an hour a day talking to your customers on Zoom. You need to figure out what happens if you run a very targeted ad against 100 people. What do they think? How do they respond? Launch and learn and improve and repeat. The way you're going to become knowledgeable about the psychology of your customers is by experimenting with your customers so that you get good taste. Because once you have good taste, then your work becomes priceless.
Do you think this is also related to the concept of empathy, like having good taste, because it means you have to spend enough time with your audience so that you can understand what it is that they're actually after?
Yeah, great point. So what's empathy? Empathy is realizing that other people don't know what you know. They don't want what you want. They don't need what you need. They don't believe what you believe. And then adding this key sentence. And that's okay. Because if you're only willing to market to people who are you, there's nobody left. You've got to be willing to market to people who don't get what you get. Because you're not rational. You're not in the center of some rational curve and everyone else is wrong. You're as irrational as everybody else. So we begin by saying, for someone who believes this, for someone who dreams of this, for someone who's wrestling with this, here. And that practical empathy opens the door, because if someone says, nah, it's not for me, we don't take it personally. We just say, thanks for letting me know, because we've now identified, I don't need to dance with you because you don't want to dance with me.
Sure. You're not part of my target audience or the people who should be engaging with my work, or I should be engaging with them, trying to solve their problems. That makes sense. Okay. I think we have time for one last question.
Okay. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Good to hear. So, and this is something that I know a lot of people have asked. Do you see AI changing the way we do marketing with AI written content? Is it going to replace modern copywriters? Is it something that worries you? Is it something that should worry us?
Yeah. Okay. GPT-3, which I've been playing with for a while, is fascinating. I majored in computer science in college and took advanced AI classes with Doug Lynott at Stanford a long time ago. Artificial intelligence is what we think computers will do tomorrow, but everything a computer can do now, oh, well, that's obvious. So word processing that does spell checking, or a computer that can beat any human in chess. Oh, that's obvious. Reading x-rays better than a human. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, it's coming for the next thing. It always does. Mediocre copywriting is doomed. Mediocre copywriting is already being replaced by clip files and will soon be replaced by, GPT-3 type recommendations for where this can go. If you're a mediocre copywriter, if you're a mediocre creative, you should get out, because it's coming for you any minute. On the other hand, because this isn't like chess where there's an easily scored competition, and because it isn't like radiology where there is a right answer, marketing is going to have a lot of resilience, because extraordinary, off the charts, unpredictable, remarkable work, that's going to be really hard for an AI to do. It always has been. And so the race is on for you to stop trying to please a mediocre boss, but go hire clients who will challenge you to go to a place where a computer could never get. We can't just keep filling in little tiny gaps. We got to make big leaps to do work that matters for people who care. Because marketing is not about selling more crap. Marketing is our culture, and our culture determines who we are. And so if you're watching this, we're counting on you to take a deep breath and lean into this moment.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you today. I know our audience listening this has probably enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you very much, Seth.
Thank you. Keep making a ruckus, everybody.